How hopeful should we be? Like in the Caribbean, how hopeful should we be? Is there any hopeful news on the horizon with this whole coronavirus business in the Caribbean here? In Trinidad here now we have the Sahara dust moving in, which seems to be quite a regular occurrence now. It's like just one of the things that seems to happen on a regular. But with Jamaica's infection rates dropping a bit, they reopened 500 schools, well over 500 schools reopened for face-to-face classes. I guess that's good news because many of the children out of school weren't doing that well. And learning has a social side to it. There's a socializing side to learning where socializing with the teacher and socializing with the other schoolmates actually helps many students to progress better and learn better. So face-to-face teaching would work better for many students. More than 500 schools across Jamaica reopened their gates today to face-to-face classes for students who will be sitting upcoming examinations. Educational institutions were ordered closed on March 21st due to a surging number of new coronavirus COVID-19 cases in the island. The Minister of Education, who visited Dunoon Park Technical High School in Kingston this morning to observe proceedings, said that more institutions are expected to reopen during this week. This is all pretty interesting and is going to create for some unique dynamics, especially considering that the entire Caribbean basically writes the same exam. So some students in Jamaica would have face-to-face classes, while some students in some other islands would still be having remote classes and still not be able to have those face-to-face opportunities. Hey there, like the content? Well, like the content. Click that like button. Don't forget to like the video. Well, that's if you like it. If you don't like it, you can comment and tell me what you don't like about it. Tell me if you disagree. Change my mind on something. I do read the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, to click the notification button so that you would know when these new videos pop up. I'm trying to release them as soon as I can, and I guess I can now. Through the Ministry of Health and Wellness, we've done the physical inspections to make sure the signs are there, the wash stations and so forth. That's great, and for some reason when we look across the world, the spread in schools doesn't seem to be that high, and it seems like the younger children at younger ages are more resilient and resistant to it, and for some reason it even spreads less in the school environment. Grade 11 student Shemoy Willis told JIS News that she was really excited to return to face-to-face learning. At home I had internet problems, it's either slow or it goes away often. I prefer physical classes because it's more interesting, she pointed out. On the contrary, Mikhail Bygrave, who is also in grade 11, said he was happy to be back in the physical school environment, but he prefers online classes. I don't have an issue with the online classes. The students are muted when they're not asking a question or contributing to discussions, so you don't have the interruptions, he said. Mikhail said he feels very prepared for the upcoming Caribbean Secondary Education Certificate exams. He sounds like one of those students who would be very prepared because he's most annoyed that he cannot mute the students in real physical classes. I really appreciate the putting of those two opposite views there at the end, where you could see that the physical classes and the online classes both have their benefits and detractions, what take away from them, but the part that takes away from the online classes is one that is actually harder to solve. The guy going in school, he may be able to learn to ignore some of the distractions that may be present, but the girl who is at home and her internet is dropping and running slowly, unless we're telling her she has to learn how to be her own internet service provider and she has to learn how to make her own equipment to run the internet better, then there isn't much she can do to solve that. So we see the inequalities there. And over on our side of the Caribbean, we're seeing some good news also. Well, according to how you look at it, we have some more COVID beds added and a halfway house created. Because one of the problems that was announced a little while back, and there was a countdown, I think the countdown has been forgotten for now, where we're counting down till all our beds are filled and then we wouldn't have any more room for these patients, and it was a real worry. So now there's a new halfway house created. The Ministry of Health activated a fourth level of care for COVID-19 patients over the weekend. Principal Medical Officer at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Miriam Abdul Richards, said that apart from the three existing tiers, ward level, high dependency unit and intensive care unit, there's now a fourth level called a halfway house. This will accommodate those who are recovering from the hospital but who are not yet fit to go home. So it's basically a convalescence home. And you could fully understand the practicality of that by being able to break up the patients that need help into different categories we'd be able to house them differently because they would have different needs and they would have different susceptibilities. So we'd be able to possibly spread them out over a wider area and be able to more securely take care of everyone. Speaking at Monday's COVID press conference, Abdul Richards said, "We are testing and exhibiting the resilience of the parallel healthcare system by converting step-down facilities and quarantine facilities into a more advanced level of care to treat those patients who are ill and require continued management and follow-up by nurses and doctors." She mentioned that another benefit of this fourth tier will be the better use of staff. Abdul Richards added that of the 110 beds introduced over the weekend, 50 were placed at the University of the West Indies campus in Davie, 40 at the Point Fortin facility, and 20 at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Valsine. The medical officer made a point also to note that getting more beds isn't really the way out of this pandemic. What we want is that there be a less demand for beds or less people sick, because we want less people in the healthcare system needing these beds in the first place. But I think that needs a next balance to it, because we want people who are sick also to come forward, because if you are sick and you are hiding the fact that you are sick, then that allows the virus to spread unknown through the country and unknown through the population, putting more people at risk and putting us at a risk level that is even unknown. And that is even more problematic. No one wants to be at a mysterious risk level. Being at a risk level that we know is bad already, because we know, okay, this is dangerous and this is what we have to prepare for. But imagine being even worse than you think you know. A 37-year-old Dago Martin woman who died at her home on Saturday night is suspected to have fallen victim to the COVID-19 coronavirus. A police report said that around 9:30 p.m., PC's Jerome and Ramki Paul were on patrol in DB when they were stopped on the street by a man. The man told police that his wife was lying unresponsive inside their home. He further reported that she has been sick for the past few days and had trouble breathing. The emergency health services was contacted and paramedics responded but were unable to revive the woman. Speaking at Monday's COVID press conference, Principal Medical Officer Dr. Abdul Richards called on people not to hesitate if they fell ill at home with symptoms of COVID-19. And that's part of the problem. Who knows how many people may be ill and refusing to go and find out for sure what they have. And it gets really scary and really personally scary for them if they have it really badly, or if they have one of the worst cases of the virus. But the vast majority of cases of coronavirus are not as bad, don't lead to fatal consequences. So that means there's a large population of people very likely in this country currently that may be ill, and some of them would know they're ill, but they refuse to go get tested for whatever reasons, whether it be they're worried that they'll be seen as one of the problematic people in the country. And I think there's a point in that about how much stigma we put on the virus on a whole, as in how we suggest people acquired the virus. And it seems like a lot of the common perception of the acquiring of the virus, because of the guidelines being put out, a lot of people have the assumption that anyone who has the virus or who got the virus was somehow behaving badly or somehow went and did something they weren't supposed to do. And while it's understandable, the focus on the guidelines, because the guidelines are there to try and decrease the spread of the virus, that's understandable. The amount of focus put on it sometimes skews how we view things. And that may in fact cause another problem in another line. So maybe we're saying, okay, we're putting this amount of attention here because these guidelines are really important. But then if there's the unintended consequence of that scaring people away from even finding out if they have the virus, then is it hindering more than it's helping? And if so many people are already afraid of even admitting whether they have the virus or not, or finding out whether they have the virus or not, then it's understandable why many people also would be apprehensive about the vaccine on a whole. There's a lot of vaccine hesitancy in the country. There's a lot of vaccine hesitancy in the region on a whole. I keep seeing this as being so problematic in the near future, as many territories, as many of the authorities, as many of the health experts that we are supposed to be listening to, most of them point out that in order to come out of this pandemic, the end of this pandemic is, as they're saying, through vaccination. So if it's through vaccination, we have to find a way to decrease this vaccine hesitancy. 1 million Trinis need to take vaccine. At least 1 million Trinidadians need to be vaccinated to achieve herd immunity from COVID-19. This according to the Chief Medical Officer, Roshan Parasram, who's speaking on Monday morning at a COVID-19 news conference, urged citizens to take the vaccine. Parasram said that vaccines are among the most important public health interventions in history, adding that if uptake is great, herd immunity can be achieved. And what Dr. Parasram is talking about there is herd immunity. And that's the solution that many people are proposing. That's the way out that many people are seeing for the pandemic. And if we are to achieve herd immunity, and we do not want people to go around getting herd immunity the natural way, which is go around and get sick and get over the virus and then get immune to it, which is a possibility, but it stands the danger of you actually have to get sick with the virus. And those at risk particularly stand a greater risk in that case. They may die trying to get that natural immunity. So the artificial immunity is how many people see us as having a way out, having a way through. And in order to have that, we need to vaccinate 1 million people, which works out to around 70% of our population. So everyone doesn't have to be vaccinated, but enough people have to be vaccinated so that the immunity that they get extends to those that aren't even vaccinated, aren't even immune, so that we have herd immunity. It's protection among the crowd, protection among the herd. But convincing people to take this vaccine and convincing people of how trustworthy the vaccine is seems to be a very uphill task, seems to be a very difficult task. What it seems to me, at least, what's going on is that many people who are already convinced that the vaccine is a good thing and they should take it are pounding into the ground those that aren't convinced, and they aren't really changing anyone's minds. And if we are saying that what we are facing is a joint danger because of these vaccines, and if people don't take these vaccines, it would be dangerous to all of us, it's in our best interest to convince everyone of this. And we saw a politician, well, a former politician trying to do this, Suraj Rambachan, who was a former UNC politician, a former MP, a former minister. He tells UNC it's criminal to create doubt about the vaccines. He's currently COVID positive. Opposition leader Kamala Persad-Bissessar should bring together all of the medical professionals in her party to voluntarily work with the PNM, People's National Movement government, to manage home quarantined COVID cases. But Rambachan said the government has set a clear policy position that only World Health Organization approved vaccines will be used. Now that the WHO has cleared the Chinese vaccines, why is the opposition still opposing its use? He said, to advance your political goals by creating doubts that could affect lives is criminal. And I understand that completely, and creating doubts just to score political points in a life and death situation is insane and should probably be considered criminal. There are questions to be asked, but the nature of how you ask the questions can help to create doubts or dispel doubts or reassure people of certain things. And while the truth of it also is that creating doubts over a doubtful thing isn't criminal, it's just appealing to the reality of the matter. However, though, you still have to measure that with exactly the reality of the matters and be able to work out responsibly how to get questions answered and get more information provided without creating an atmosphere of panic. Over in Grenada, they're struggling with this. Their nurses aren't taking the vaccines. They have a lot of frontline workers who are refusing to take their vaccines. They have vaccines there. They have vaccines waiting to be taken, and the nurses are refusing to take them. Nurses and other frontline health workers in Grenada are not rushing to get the COVID-19 vaccine, and this is causing a headache for health authorities. A significant amount of healthcare workers are not getting vaccinated, said Acting Chief Medical Officer, CMO, Dr. Sean Charles on Tuesday during a government news conference. With less than 5% of the Grenadian population vaccinated so far with the double dose of AstraZeneca vaccine hesitancy is now a phrase constantly falling from the lips of health officials who are aiming to reach an 80% vaccination rate in a population of 111,000 people. And that's the thing with Grenada. They have such a small population that it's very easy for them, well, not very easy, but it's less logistically difficult for a country the size of Grenada, just over 100,000 people, to get them all vaccinated, or 80% as their intention. But they have the struggle where their frontline workers do not want to get vaccinated. And how would you attempt to convince a population that you should get the vaccine when the frontline workers who are exposed to getting the virus at a higher risk, who should be more knowledgeable on these healthcare activities, when they are apprehensive about getting it? Good luck trying to get other people to get it after that. And as I keep saying, I fully understand some of the vaccine hesitancy because a lot of people don't have a lot of the information that is out there. They find a lot of the information that is out there may not be reliable. They don't know what to think. And okay, it's understandable, some vaccine hesitancy. But there seems to be a large section of the population that's invested in creating fear through this. And I'm not sure I understand why, but I guess there's a human nature that tends to always like to predict the worst things and like to be the predictor of these things, and knowing when they come gives you a sense of power, I guess. But without a doubt, there seems to be some mischief playing in and around this whole COVID and coronavirus, and in particular the vaccine. Our ever-present Commissioner of Police, if it's one thing can be said about him, is he isn't afraid to step into the light, as it were, to face his critics and step up to the podium to speak about things that he thinks about. And he is saying that he recognizes the threat to destabilize TNT and calls for info from the public. The Commissioner of Police, Gary Griffith, says he has observed an increase in voice notes, anonymous videos, and social media posts by individuals using pseudonym. Speaking via a press release on Monday, the top cop has noted that this content appears to incite and encourage the public to protest, riot, and rise up against the police and state institutions. Such conduct, the Commissioner of Police says, is designed and geared towards instability, panic, and efforts to destabilize the nation's democracy. There's a balance in between what he is saying there that also must be struck. Because if he's saying it's intended to incite and encourage the public to protest, riot, and rise up against the police and state, those aren't all the same things. The public has a right to protest. They can protest if there's something they don't like, and rising up against the police and state is kind of according to how you see it. If they're rising up in physical violence, well, then that's not good. But if they're rising up in terms of questioning, then that's not a problem. And a police and state who do not want people to question is one you should be afraid of. But I don't think, and I hope it's not that he's talking about. He's talking about those voice notes that, yes, some of us know they circulate and somebody's speaking in a hushed tone and they're talking about a dream they had and the entire decimation of the country and what the vaccine is really about, and they heard it here and they heard it there. And I enjoy a good conspiracy just like anybody else, but when it comes to matters of life and death, it makes sense for us to actually try to evaluate this with a little more sense than just what we heard in a voice note and a little bit of information we might have browsed across from some obscure website. So the information is out there. You can go, you can research, you can read it. You do not need a bachelor's degree to find out something. You can just go, search, read the information, read what the so-called professionals might be saying, and see if it makes sense to you. If you have to make decisions for yourself, you need to understand these decisions and understand the knowledge behind it. So go find out for yourselves too.